moment. There is no way of knowing if YouTube. Hey, it says starting. Yay. Okay. Um, Welcome everybody to another episode of Tomes and Tales, Mischief of Mice. We are a group of friends across the world that. Hold on, we've got technical difficulties.
Sorry, my bad.
We're a group of friends from around the globe that are just discussing graphic novels. And today's is Hawkeye, My Life as a Weapon, as chosen by me, Vallen Frostweaver. Hi, everybody. And we're going to go through the list. And next we've got Kashka.
Hi.
And we have Helen and Adam.
Hello.
And we have Lilac SC.
Hi.
And if you'll all forgive me, we're trying an experimental stream today. Things may or may not go as planned, so hopefully everything will go relatively well. Just ignore this bit at the top of the screen here that should fade in and out. I'm basically screencasting so that we can get an interactive chat going should people want to speak with us today in the chat, because we haven't had that option available to us in the past.
If you want to chat in the chat, you can chat in the chat.
It should be on there. Hopefully it's on there. But anyway, hey, it says that two people are watching, and I know that one of them is Kashka and one of them is me, so something's working. All right. I'm just gonna hog the camera for a little bit and discuss the book in general. There are going to be spoilers as usual because we're discussing what we've already read about the novel for those that are watching this. So essentially, this is a collection. It's not just like a Hawkeye series. It's a bit different from our usual graphic novel, where in this one it's a collection of the Hawkeye 1 through 5, and then the last one is one issue of Young Avengers Presents number 6, which is a bit different. There's some artist switches, and it's all the same writer, I believe, though, which is Matt Fraction. And if you give me a moment here, I have his details. There it is. He's known as Frichtman, but he's better known as Fraction, is his pen name. He's an Eisner Award-winning American comic book writer, and is known for he's done a lot of stuff, but most of his popular stuff is the Invincible Iron Man, the Immortal Iron Fist, Uncanny X-Men, Hawkeye, and Casanova and Sex Criminals for Image Comics. Funny that he's done a bit of a switch over there from Marvel to Image, but I guess as they do tend to kind of float around from one to another. Plus, there are 3 different artists. We've got David Aja, which he's known for the Immortal Iron Fist. Strange. I think I just mentioned that with Matt Fraction doing some writing. And also Hawkeye. He is done the primary first several issues of artwork here that I'm showing on the screen. So that's the art style that he's responsible for. And then we've got Javier Pulido. Excuse me if I did not pronounce your name right, Javier. But he's known primarily for Human Target, Robin Year One, She-Hulk, Amazing Spider-Man. He's the one that did, let's see if I can get a more traditional old school comic effect. Let's see if I can find a good picture here. Here we go. This is the kind of artwork that he's responsible for, and the artist that he is in there for. That would be, I think, issue number 5, I think, in the series there. And then, of course, we've got Alan Davis, which he's a writer and an illustrator, but in this case he was an illustrator for the Young Avengers Presents number 6, which is the stuff at the end, which is much more modern comic illustration effects, if you look here. And I should say that he's actually responsible for one of my favorite comic book series, which is really silly, and that is Excalibur. He's done a lot of work on that. He has also done Captain Britain, The Uncanny X-Men, Clandestine, Justice League America, the Nail, JLA, another Nail, and so on. But to give an example, this is, and it's a bit pixely, but this is part of the artwork that he did from a long time ago of Excalibur, and it's one of the images that we have actually in our room. Absolutely love this guy's work on some of his more detailed old school, I've only got like 20 colors to work with type stuff. It's fantastic. In the more recent version, it's like I was saying, a lot more modern, and I don't know, it looks like he gets the job done, but he doesn't have like the fantastic covers in the last one like he did with the others, but given half a chance, this guy can really outperform. So I guess the idea is that Hawkeye here is essentially a non-superpowered superhero, and is also one that shares his name with another Hawkeye as well. And he's part of the Avengers, and this is just kind of like a little glint into his life when he's not with the Avengers. Which everybody has pretty much seen on the big screen, some major events and so on. But this essentially encapsulates him getting the tar beat out of him on a regular basis when he's not with the Avengers. And I just really liked it. I thought it was a good change. Each issue is totally different for me, but I thought that would be something there. And with that, I've got plenty of questions, but I've had the floor for a bit, so I'm hoping that somebody will have something that they can volunteer, talk about.
I'll volunteer the first question.
Have at
which
it.
Is super easy. What art style did you like the best? Since we have 3 art styles that are in this comic, and I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big fan of the, is it Aja? Aja? Aha?
I think
I'm not sure how to say the last name. AJA was the name of the last name of the author. And this is kind of an example of sort of a rough, gritty art style, but I loved it. I thought, to have that one as the first one in, and it had they really worked the purple in a lot, which seems to be Hawkeye's thing. And I really enjoyed that art style. So when I had to move to the other art styles, it was a little sad for me, just because I really enjoyed the one. So that's my thing.
Go ahead.
I think I agree. I really like David Aja's style as well. I thought it was a little, I don't want to say realistic, but the fact that it wasn't all completely detailed, that it was kind of sketched out, that it was rougher, and that seemed to be kind of how Hawkeye was living his life, just kind of tumbling from one scrape to the next, whether it was with these random Russian jumpsuit guys who seemed to own his building, or whether it was, looking after the dog that got hit, or whatever was happening, he just seemed to kind of tumble from one thing to another, and the art style seemed to kind of represent that to me, in terms of going from something really smooth and classic to kind of rougher, sketchier. So I definitely think I preferred that. I do like the other style, but for me, if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely go with David Aja's. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I would go with his style personally.
I think his Spanish nationality, so I'm guessing it's Aya.
Aya, okay.
Yeah, I agree, not just because I'm sitting next to Helen, but
You are punch
part of it.
So.
No, I agree. In fact, when I read Immortal Iron Fist, who David Aja also did, his art style, I like it, but it didn't match the character quite as much. it's a bit more of a detailed story with more lore, and the art being sort of impressionistic and just minimalist didn't I felt was a little odd. But in here, it makes perfect sense. Just like Helen said, it's he's a very I can't remember who's the name of the main character from Die Hard. I can't believe I'm forgetting.
Oh my gosh.
Bruce Willis's character?
Yeah, Bruce Willis's character.
I can't remember.
I know, it's...
I should know this. I was brought
The
up on
chat's
that
going to start
series.
going crazy, right? Sorry. Regardless, though, he's
Yeah.
very much that character, which is just fumbling his way around, getting beat up. And the art is very much like that, too. It only shows you enough that's necessary and moves on quickly. And looks good while doing it, so I really like David's work. I'm going to look up who that is because it's bothering me.
Not a problem.
I don't have my phone with me. I'm going to yell out in the middle of the stream.
How about you?
Okay, so we have to clarify something about this and about like the rest of it, because I'm confused about the very last section of the book. Are we considering that part of this book, or like? Yeah, we're considering that part of this. Okay. I still, you know, I still like the minimal styles though that were earlier on in the novel. Like, I get that there's really nice having like the detail of you know, the well kind of like just colorized, you know, where you've got like a million colors that you're using instead of like Vallen said, like 20. And there is value to that, but I still like the minimal.
So, what are you saying?
Yeah, I agree with the group. As much as I want to be as much as I want to add variety, my opinion is the same.
All right. Well, I think I'm actually going to surprise some people by saying I agree. Even though I touted, you know, the last illustrator in this, I don't think that it's the best example of his work. And it was actually the artwork from the first one, you know, that brought in this whole effect that really drew me into it. I mean, I saw images on comic websites like when this was first being brought out, if I can actually, you know, of, you know, just this kind of stuff. You know, it's like the lines and stuff. I'm a bit of a graphic artist, you know, in my history, and I mean, I like these little panels here. That's cool, is what she's saying in slow motion as he's shooting multiple arrows into one target. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's done really well. Minimal colors, big effect, you know, and it just, once again, like the whole Sin City effect for me, where you've got a few colors per page, and it tends to lend itself. Now, don't get me wrong, he's got a few on here that, you know, have a lot of different colors on it, but you can see that there's an overall theme on a page. Like here is a lot of like kind of yellows and oranges, and then on the other one it's very sad and, you know, sleepy and rainy and stuff, and it's very blued, but I mean, uses it to great effect. So I really did like the first one best, and the last one was probably my second favorite, though he has done some of my favorite art for some of my favorite comics. And not to knock the, you know, the middle comics here, you know, this type of stuff, it's definitely a good throwback for it, you know, but it just wasn't my cup of tea for from transitioning from one and to the last. It kind of interrupted a bit, and was, the story in that one actually seemed a bit weird as well, but it did look like old school comics. So with that in effect, for me, just because the characters and everything that they were using in there with like the weird helmets and the outfits, and it's like, wow, they look very outlandish. That's what kind of brought me into that one. So I did appreciate that, though it did not stick with me as much.
Okay, so I have two more comments. One, I don't even know if this has any value, but I liked the way that Katie was drawn by the first artist, actually. I didn't like the way she was drawn later in the book. So I don't know. Maybe I mean that's just a personal preference, I guess. But or maybe that's just because that's the first Katie that I saw. So I wanted her to remain constant, and I felt like when actually the artist switched, there were inconsistencies with Katie. So that was something that was like a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't like that much. I know that's not like really related to my favorite art style, but I did like the way she was drawn by the first artist. And then the other thing, and this again really isn't particularly related to my favorite art style book, but it is related to the visual side of the book. Is something that bothered me was the speech bubbles versus thought bubbles. I was like, I needed something stronger than the shape to be like, this is a thought and this is a speech. Because sometimes I was reading thoughts as if they were spoken words. You know, and well, not really vice versa. The spoken words I got, but for some reason there were pages where I was reading the thoughts as spoken words, and I needed something stronger. Like maybe like a different color or a different font or something like that. But they were just like, I had to go back and reread it. Like, okay, was that really a thought, or was that an out loud? Or
so I'm showing an example right now of a thought and
yeah,
spoken.
and maybe
it's very difficult to
maybe
tell
it's just
sometimes.
my deficiency, right? But I just personally needed something, and I know it's not related to my favorite artist, but it is something about the book, like the visual of the book, that kind of bugged me for whatever reason.
I think I had the most trouble with the thought bubble or the thought square versus the talking bubble in the very last one. The like super color charged one. Like they had a bunch of thought bubbles in that one, and they even tinted them, but I was still like kind of having some trouble there.
Well, I think the problem was that they tinted them in the same color as the page, so it didn't help. It just and I mean, if you look, like I've got here, let's see if I can actually get it to focus properly. I mean, the tinting is so minuscule because they tinted it lighter blue. So you can't really tell. So we get this in the center of the screen. I don't know. It's difficult to look at a screen and hold it up at the same time. But you got your thoughts in the speech bubble, so it's difficult to actually tell sometimes, like you were saying. Yeah.
I think I didn't necessarily struggle with it a ton, but in terms of the tinting, I totally agree. The light blue was almost negligible, so I didn't really see the point of it. And also, I wanted to mention, in terms of the art, I think, looking back through it now as we're talking about it, the only character I really liked in that kind of older style was Madame Mask. I thought she looked really kind of classic in that older style. And I did prefer Katie in the first style, but I also did really like her in the Young Avengers, or whatever it's called at the back. I did really like her depiction in that as well. But the middle one, she just seemed kind of big, wide blue eyes, innocent little girl, and it was just like, I really liked her as a character, and just the depiction of her, the way it changed, it didn't really do much for me in terms of her. But again, I thought Madame Mask was quite well depicted in terms of the art.
I
will say there's a third type of speech bubble we haven't mentioned, and that's the language that you don't speak, that he's guessing on, like Russian maybe.
Oh yeah.
And it's sort of like his own editorial on what he's hearing. And that's why I love Fraction's writing, is it's very sassy and very sarcastic. But not, it doesn't look like he's trying very hard.
Yeah. I think I've seen, like, because way back when, thought bubbles were like big clouds above people's heads, and it got to distracting from serious situations when you've got a cloud above someone's head. So I think that they've since tried to eliminate that, and this is them trying to remedy it. But I think I've seen it better when it's part of the panel. Like if this is the panel, it actually has like in the corner, it just has this section that comes out and words are in there. So it's not actually in the colored panel itself. It's like next to it or in the corner of it or something. Or even if it's just, with the regular colors behind it, it's not even in any kind of bubble or square or anything like that. So it's just on the regular colored background. So it's like a narrator jumping in. I found that worked much better. So just... each one going about it their own different way, but I think they were trying some different styles on this one, and most of the time they hit it on the mark there. But I think the speech bubbles were a little bit, little off.
Can I mention one thing I just loved was their censoring?
Yeah.
That was
This
fantastic.
one particular frame.
Yep.
They put his Hawkeye mask over. Oh my god. I thought it was so clever, and it really worked in kind of the funny, some of the humor in it.
Right.
And it was the classic Hawkeye mask that they're not even using.
Yeah.
It was almost like, this is the old way of doing it, we're just going to use it as a censor bar.
That's very funny.
All right, so I'm going to jump in with the next question here if nobody objects. So what did you guys think of the idea of a superhero comic without any superpowers? Or superheroine, seeing as how Katie is, almost as prominent in this as Clint.
They're like partners, yeah.
I would say that's why I read it, actually. Because my favorite superheroes are, in no particular order, Batman, Iron Man, Hawkeye, Green Arrow. So I like all the characters that don't have superpowers. I think they're more relatable. I never thought Superman was all that relatable because he's an alien that can fly, and I can't do that. Not that I'm Batman or Iron Man, but at least it's a little bit more accessible. That their superpower is just being good at something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually what drew me to this comic.
Okay. If people were struggling with that, the next part I was going to ask was, did it make the story better or worse from this fact alone, or did it, is that what brought you in, or you just ended up reading it and would prefer the superpowers to make it more fantasy for you? I don't know.
Well, even though he didn't have superpower, they were still highly skilled at at shooting arrows. So I mean, it's not like they were an everyday person. So you still had that, neat talent of theirs that they could do. And it was, one of the things that I really liked about it was kind of a Batman thing, a little bit, like the gadgety different arrows that they would show like a thing on. That was really neat. That extra little thing I really enjoyed about the comic.
That was crazy. Like, what else can these arrows do? Are they going to wash his dishes? Hang his socks out to dry? But I agree. I like the fact that his superpower wasn't really like unnatural power, if you like. It's something that humans can do, and he could just do it ridiculously well. So I did think that added to the story. I don't think that. I agree with Adam actually that it makes it a more accessible story, and it makes him a more accessible character. What else?
Well, I mean, for me, it definitely brought it in as well. I feel that actually drew me into it. That and my love of archery, but the whole idea of, I don't know, I guess like James Bond is much more interesting to a lot of people because he's really good at what he does, but it's feasible. There's no like rays shooting out of people's hands or anything like that, unless it's like some super villain invention, I guess. But I mean, it seems a lot more believable because it's within that realm, and it's not as overpowered as a lot of superhero powers tend to be. I mean, obviously, he actually does have a superpower, as a lot of professionals do, when they're really good at something like that. And I think that it just really works, and it drew me in because I don't know how long I've read a lot of fantasy, and then I'm like, well, why don't people make things about non-fantasy stuff that is just as cool, about somebody trying to be with that fantasy. And I didn't even realize that they already had been for like ages with characters like Hawkeye, so I felt it definitely drew me in as well.
I liked the constant throughout the book. This is bad. Oh, this is really bad.
That's how every issue started.
Like a little bit of like self-doubt and this is gonna hurt, and kind of thing kept creeping back in. And you see him, in the first few pages of the book, you see him like in like almost full body cast because he's fallen out of that building, and he's like, doctor's like, yeah, you've broken this and that and the next thing. And, yeah. So he was a very human Avenger.
And yet we still don't know why he was falling on the very first page. He just was falling in crash. But I feel he did actually have some kind of superpower, because he had this ability to get the crap beat out of him, everything broken in his body, and 6 weeks later he'd be back at it again. So I don't know about that. Shattered pelvis. Okay, yeah, no problem. He's back up,
Avengers.
jumping across beds naked while being shot at,
Maybe like Avengers / Shield has just an awesome medical program.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yes.
They did another thing that was very subtle, and I think they only did it once in this volume, and then they've done it a few more times, if I remember right, in volume 2. And it's when an inanimate object disappoints him, like his coffee spills. He goes, "Oh, coffee!" And I find that hilarious. I think at one point in volume 2, if his car breaks down, he goes, "Oh, car!" Like, just I just love that whole very sort of humor. And we looked it up. It's John McClane, by the way.
Thank you. Yay! I actually thought that it was really out of character, but it drew me in a lot more because of the fact that he couldn't seem to steady a cup of coffee, but yet he could shoot 3 arrows and hit one target in 3 prime spots. It's like, well, what the heck? And then the next scene, he's just drinking coffee out of the kettle instead of the cup because he can't handle the cup. So, I mean, it definitely humanizes him quite a bit there in my mind. Obviously he's really good at like the assassin-y type stuff, but maybe not so good at the everyday. Flip that coin at the beer bottle, not break it when he needs to. But I don't know. All right. Somebody else want to take another question before I jump in with more?
Sorry, I had another question.
Go for it.
About the story.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else feel a little whiplash with how quickly and it just... the stories seem very fragmented and not like an ongoing narrative. Mm-hmm. So I was just wondering if this really is a series in and of itself, or if it felt a little bit like it was just a compilation of different storylines.
Actually,
and I wondered if anybody else had trouble with that.
Actually, I'd like to speak to that.
Okay.
The idea is that this is actually a collection of different times and places that Hawkeye was not with the Avengers. So if you look at it with that perspective, it's not one continuous story. that follows through, in my mind at least. It's a bunch of different circumstances that happen, and they may actually end up rolling into each other a little bit. And I do agree, they felt a bit fragmented to me, if you try and read it in that manner. But I was seeing it as a collection of stories about Hawkeye, not as a continuous story. And with this in mind, it also makes me think of how comics used to be. A lot of the time, they were one story in a comic, and then they might have something relating, like, to how the characters develop later on, so that people would, have some kind of finality to it. And then later on, they started doing bigger story arcs, and then they started doing crossovers and even bigger story arcs. But I felt that this kind of lent itself more to the old school, really old school comic, do a story in one issue, maybe two, and then move on to the next one with the same one. So it's like old TV shows, like Dukes of Hazzard or something.
So no longer arc.
So this is like a short story collection.
And that is kind of what I see it as, because this is basically when he's off the clock from his Avengers job, and he just decides to do the right thing on other places as well.
He just wants to help so much. He's always like, I want to help this guy, or I want to help this person. Yeah, I get that. But I did have a problem with it. Maybe it's just that I'm used to like the longer story arcs, or the story arcs that at least last like one volume, and I totally get that this is like more kind of old school, where the stories were one issue long kind of thing, and you were just following that character for the character themselves, not so much for the story that they're involved in. But I prefer a longer story arc, so I kind of had some problems. Like, I wanted a bit more, and I had no idea that this is going to be a collection of short stories, so I was not ready for it when it switched gears. I was like, wait, the dog? What? The dog? I need closure on the dog before we move on. So yeah, I had issues with it.
Well, I was the same way, and I too love Hawkeye, and I bought the first 3 volumes of this, and sort of ran out of steam for that same reason. I was looking for a long story arc. I like to just binge read long stories, and the fact that it's this series of vignettes that may or may not relate to each other, well, I think is great, and I'm glad it's there. It wasn't what I was looking for, and I haven't kept up with the series because of that, because I sort of ran out of interest. And this is making me want to go back and get back into it and read it for what it is, which is a series of stories, because they are very good, but I was sort of hoping for something different.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because I knew that you had picked up some other volumes, and I was curious if it followed in the same manner or not, and I guess that answers. So yeah, definitely.
I don't remember that it does. I don't remember that there's more of an arc, but I'm also a few volumes behind, so they may pick it back up. So I don't think my experience is fair to judge, but I'm willing to revisit it and see again.
Okay. What about you, Lilac SC? Did you feel that it was a bit fragmented?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It was just. The stories were also so different.
Yeah.
The first one, had a lot of action and, car chase scenes. It was like a movie. And then the next one was kind of slow and everything happening in this one hotel and not like high octane action. And then the very last one was really short. I'm not really going to include that in the thing. But
yeah.
I think just the change in art styles also didn't help with attempting to read it all the way through. Plus, I was just coming off of Low, which is one long storyline, so that probably set me up for failure when it came to following something. But yeah, if I read it again knowing that they were short stories, I think that I'd have a lot easier time.
I have to say I agree with what everybody else has kind of been saying. It between the art style changing and the storyline changing completely, I felt like somebody just kind of smacked me across the face and was just like, "What? What? But what's happening? And why does she look so different?" You know, and where's the dog?
Yeah, the dog story kind of
Um,
draws you in the beginning, then just drops you off.
It does. It really does. Yeah, I don't dig it when it's not one long story. It's too little. It's too little.
So here's a question though, kind of a follow-up question to this. Would you guys have felt better about this if these were like, if you'd read it as a one-shot issue, you know, where it was consistent artist, and you only read that issue, and would you still have been like, I need more to this story, or would it have been satisfying by itself?
I still would have wanted more, in particular the first 3 issues. Fraction and Aja, I love that and wanted more of that. But if it was clear to me ahead of time, this is all you get, then that's fine. I would know to expect that, and it has nice bookends to the story. So it would have made it a little bit better, I think.
For me, I would not have gone for it as like a single. I need more, I guess. I need a longer story. I need. I don't think I would have been satisfied, and I probably wouldn't have gone for something that I knew was like a single issue. For me, that's not enough. I need more than one issue.
Well, they were technically 3 issues each.
Oh yeah.
Is that
Yeah, I
how
think
it
so.
was? Yeah.
No, there was 6 issues in total. There was 1 through 5, and then so yeah, Adam was right when he said that the first 3, and then I think the first 4 were actually the same illustrators. I could be mistaken there, but the whole Madame Mask one
I think it's the first
is
3.
another. Actually, he might have done 2.
Yeah,
I can't remember. Yeah, one of
1
2.
through
Yeah, so then you've got
1 through
like
3 are the same.
yeah, so it kind
okay.
of varies. So it's 1 through 3, and then 1 and 2, and then 1 by itself with the whole Young Avengers Presents.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, with your question like that, I think I would have enjoyed it as single. But yeah, I have to say that originally I was drawn to this by the first few issues in the volume. And I think that's what I was looking more for. And when it switched up partway through to something else, that threw me off and kind of gave it a bad taste in my mouth. Not to knock the artists of the other ones or anything of that nature, but it just kind of it changed gears on me. It seemed to stay more consistent in the first few issues, but yeah, they didn't seem to really run together well. Separately, though, I think that if I would have just read 1 issue instead of 1 volume, like the first one, I would have been like, oh, I want more, but I wanted to see what would happen next, not jump 5 years forwards or backwards or something to find out, another little episode that he had and things did not go well. So I think I'm actually out of questions here because pretty much it was covered for me.
Oh.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about female Hawkeye, Kate? Did you appreciate her being in there, either as a partner or I know we're not really talking about it, but as in the Young Avengers, she was kind of the main character.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, I was honestly more interested in her story than Hawkeye's. She seemed more, and as much as I didn't like her illustration so much in the second one. Her character was still really good. Like, she was still really sneaky and still kind of sassy and still just kind of showing Hawkeye up a little bit in her way, whether she's driving the getaway car or whether she's posing as Madame Mask. Like, and
bragging about it.
For me, I want to read her. And I did enjoy reading Hawkeye, even though it did give me a little bit of whiplash with the change in stories. But if you give me a female Hawkeye, a comic about Kate, which I'm sure is probably out there and I'm just unaware of it, but I'll probably read that any day of the week. And I was wondering if you guys felt the same, or kind of how you perceived her character.
I did. I felt like her character was one that was developing in front of us, where Hawkeye was presented as an established character with these sets of established quirks and, moral values and all that jazz, where Katie, I felt like, Katie or Kate? I felt like she was still figuring out like where her place was in the Avengers and like what she was all about, and should she be nicking a bow or should she be like, helping Hawkeye, or so that I think is just naturally more interesting because she's no matter what her age in the book, her character is quite young, where Hawkeye, no matter his age, his character is very mature.
I'm going to jump in there and give my opinion on that as well, if you don't mind. I think they're equally as interesting, and I enjoyed it the most, to me, when they were partnered together, because it was two different... It's going to sound... I think this actually complements what Kashka was saying. Two different generations. I think Hawkeye, which obviously from the little symbol covering his nether regions when he was jumping across the bed, was old school comic. He's got a lot of history from a long time ago, and Katie, being more recent and more to the nowadays crowd in my mind, at least. That's why she's also part of the Young Avengers, so therefore they're trying to get some fresh blood in, and they're trying to pass the torch from one Hawkeye to another. Plus, I just have to show this. Look, there it is, right underneath my ring finger here. Look at this. Come on, she looks like Pris from Blade Runner with arrows in her hair wig, and she's at a circus and she's like shooting dudes. You can't miss that stuff. You couldn't have Hawkeye, like the male Hawkeye, doing that. He looks silly. She pulls it off. So...
I could think of equivalent things that the male Hawkeye could do.
The one thing I did not like about how she was presented, though, was that at the very beginning, she was really, really strong and just as good of an archer as he was. Now, they did say, that he was like the best shot, and she was the best shot that he was aware of. So therefore, that kind of puts it like he's number one, she's number two, kind of thing. But when she steals his bow in the Young Avengers, and then they end up doing the bet, and he shoots the crap bow and ends up winning. And she's just like totally astounded. It's like, from what we were seeing her do before, it's like, you shouldn't be astounded because you were shooting while being carried by Hawkeye. You shot, some ricochet shots, and you shot Hawkeye's bindings while he just held his hand in the air for a quick moment. It seemed to kind of reverse progress her character in my mind. Like they weakened her so that she could be humbled by him or something. I don't know.
Sorry, I think it was because that was a flashback. Because when she first meets Clint in the Avengers hideout after she had been attacked by Ronan, she says, "You're Clint Barton, you're Hawkeye." So it makes it seem like that's the first time that they met. And then presumably he trained her later. That's what I read.
Okay.
Yep.
So to me, it was more of a master-apprentice tension in the first issue of he's trained her, and she's just as good, if not maybe better than him,
Yeah.
but doesn't really want to test it,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense because he did teach her.
Gotcha.
But that was me projecting it, but I don't know if that's actually true.
Mm-hmm. Well, I still did really enjoy her character quite a bit.
That was probably one of the things that was most difficult for me moving from storyline to storyline, was because their dynamic was so different in each set of issues. So you start, and it was kind of regressing by having her so strong in that first one, and Abel, and they were almost like just partners rather than like a master trainer sort of deal. And then the second one, they were still like, she was more of a sidekick rather than a partner. And then that very last one, it was almost as if she didn't even know him, which is totally different than that first one where they have, kind of this tension between them and a lot of history. And so, that their relationship was very different.
It made that Madame Mask scene a little bit more interesting, where she had to find the card on his person.
Yeah.
So this is a question that I kind of have for you guys. Did you feel like there was like sexual tension between Katie and Hawkeye in the first two kind of story sections, shall we say, of the book? I obviously not in the last one, right? Because she's like, they've just met and she's half his age and she's his apprentice kind of thing. So I didn't get that at all then. But during the first two kind of sections, I was like, are they trying to establish something here, or like?
I felt it the strongest in the first one. The first one, they even had like scenes where she was like, pausing after they get off the phone and kind of thinking about him saying, "I would never." He says something like, "I would never date," or "I don't see you as a sexual object," or something.
I wouldn't sleep with you, or something like that. Or,
She seemed a little disappointed by that.
I guess I thought it was more on her side. Like, she was attracted to him, but he looked at her as kind of an apprentice kid sister type thing, not so much as somebody who is a grown woman in her own right.
Yeah, I think they kept it almost deliberately vague, and I kind of liked that. I wasn't sure what they were trying to imply, and that's probably because the characters themselves may not even know. Their relationship is sort of randomly becoming a little bit more complicated, and neither of them are sure where the other stands. And so that ambiguity, I felt that because I wasn't really sure. I liked that, actually.
And
go ahead.
it allowed her to make fun of him too for that Cherry character, like on and on about this random woman apparently that he has bedded.
It's sort of like, what is it? She's all like, let's see if I can actually hold this straight for people to see. Where she's like, really? With the abs and stuff? Oh gosh, I can't hold this worth crap. Oh gosh.
Right.
So she's like, really? With the abs and stuff? Come on. And he's like, just drive the car. Go, go, go. She's like, you're half naked getting into the car. What's going on? That was just a lot of fun. But I definitely agree. There was a lot of sexual tension, and I think that Hawkeye was afraid, to bridge that whole mentor-student thing. Plus, there was, as we saw in the last one, he's like twice her age, so it kind of, I don't know, it was probably a bit awkward for him, like he felt like he might have been leading her to that. And this whole phone conversation that you guys were talking about, that definitely, in my mind, proves that that there's the tension, at least on one side. Even if he doesn't see it himself, he might just immediately push it aside, like he's more of a father figure. And doesn't really want to see her that way necessarily, even if it's conscious. I think he just really likes working with her and sees the potential and her as a partner. Not to say he doesn't think she's attractive, because I think he does, but I think he's also trying to stay away from that.
Yeah.
But that was a good call. That was a good call. Good question. I think I'm actually out of questions. I just clicked the wrong thing.
I have a question if no one else does. I have lots of questions.
Oh, let's hear it.
And this is a particular question because I'm not familiar with Hawkeye at all.
Mm-hmm.
Was Cherry Black Widow?
Oh.
She
don't know.
felt very Black Widow-ish to me, but then again, she wasn't. If she was Black Widow, she would have gotten out of those constraints. Sort of deal. But it just felt like she was driving that cool car, and she had the bright red hair. I don't know.
I
was confused by that too.
I thought Black Widow was a blonde. Huh?
Is she? In the movie, she's got red hair. So
you're thinking Black Canary.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, Black Widow. Okay. Back on target.
I'm gonna say it's possible, but I think it's extremely unlikely. It's possible because we know that at least from the movies because I'm not an old school Hawkeye fan or Black Widow. I've not watched them, or read their comics and stuff from whenever. I only recently got into them. But from the movies that I've learned, they have a history together, though I don't know that it's romantic. And I don't think that it would come after him and Katie being that much of a partner together. I think it would have come much earlier in their relationship, though I could be severely mistaken. Anybody else care to chime in?
She definitely reminded me of Black Widow, but I agree. I think it's very implausible that would actually have been her. Mostly, if they keep to the Black Widow character's background, she's a spy. She wouldn't have been fumbling about, and we wouldn't have been able to tell it was Black Widow, I suppose. I think it was more just, we kind of know Clint's type, and she was his type, and that's what that character was sort of like, okay, he's going to go for her because she's kind of Black Widow-y, but I don't know that they were heavily implying it was Black Widow. But it was a little confusing.
I think that's just more proof that Marvel needs to make a Black Widow and Clint movie.
If they make the movie, I want there to be a Kate Bishop. After having read this, I really want that character to be in there too.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah, honestly, if they make the movie, they would have to redo Clint's storyline, because having a random wife in a safe house with a ton of kids. Didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of
weird. Especially when his
weird.
type is supposed to be this strong, independent woman, and then it's like, oh yeah, she's pregnant again. In a house, all alone. Nothing weird about that.
Well, maybe she can handle a bow.
I digress.
Oh. Maybe his wife in the Avengers is actually Kate. No,
that would make me very sad.
No, that would be really weird. No. Sorry, I regret even mentioning that. But I would fear...
Especially since they were kind of like the same age in the movie. Or at least they looked it.
Yeah.
I fear that that Kate would be looked down upon, actually, and only because of the whole Hunger Games phenomenon that's only just recently coming to an end. And I think that they would figure she's some kind of clone instead of or that they would rely too much on that kind of persona. I don't know. I really want to see more about that character, and I thought it was an excellent character. But I just feel that the public would kind of associate it with that. And they're trying to jump off of that, the publicity in that aspect.
Yeah.
But you've also got all the publicity with the Green Arrow, or Arrow, I mean.
in Arsenal.
So you've got kind of that work, and the people who are really going to be interested in that movie are going to be the comic book people, not the
It's true.
Katniss Everdeen fan club. Maybe.
You never know.
But like her personality would be so different from Katniss Everdeen. She'd be so much stronger and self-assured than I think she'd be awesome.
It's not in the future, so it's easier to be self-assured when you're not living under dystopia. But no, I agree.
Well, and also, like, if you, at least from my perspective when I was reading it, it seemed like she came from a fairly wealthy family. If she's used to going to galas and dressing up and going to the opera and that kind of stuff.
Hawkeye does say she's rich as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that she would be a strong character in a movie because she's got a lot of stuff going for her. Plus, if she did draw in the Katniss Everdeen crowd, that's not really a bad thing.
Yeah.
They females in superhero movies.
Well, if she does get introduced in some kind of TV series or something, as like an add-in character, obviously, I have this feeling she's not going to get her own series. It's possible, but I could see them adding her in as like this little unknown or something, sort of like. I hope that it's in one of the Netflix ones because I really don't care for the Arrow series, and I love the Green Arrow, but I hate the Arrow series. And I love the Daredevil series and the Jessica Jones series. Those were fantastic.
Yeah, but you didn't like Flash.
I didn't like Flash either. Flash was crap. I wanted to like Flash. I wanted to like Arrow, but I could not take them. That I was like getting indigestion watching them. But I hope that they bring her in as some kind of character in, maybe like the Daredevil style or something like that, or even both of the Hawkeyes would be great. I could see that being really interesting. But I mean, they are real people without superpowers, and Jessica Jones has superpowers, and Daredevil's just really good at kung fu, and he can see sound.
Yeah. I could see them bringing her in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. maybe, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at least. At some point, it became a bit about superpowers, but there were, at least early on, lots of characters that didn't have superpowers that were kicking butt. They could bring her in on that. That's Marvel.
That's true.
I think that may be the best slot. I'm not optimistic about it, but I would like that.
Yeah, actually, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are known at this point for trying to stick close to the movies, but they just don't quite click in some way, shape, or form in some aspects. So I can see that being good, and that's kind of, I feel that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually bridges the gap between the Flash and Arrow and Daredevil and Jessica Jones. They're kind of in the middle. they're corny enough that it's good, and not like the other ones where it's a little too corny for me. But that would be good. I could see that. That would be really interesting for me.
Well, the Netflix shows are a lot grittier than the other shows, like as stylistic and kind of. I don't know. I feel like the edges are rounded in some of the CW and ABC shows.
Yeah.
The Netflix ones, they're jagged edges and they don't care.
They're pointy.
I would argue that the CW shows may start off rounded, but they get plenty pointy as you progress through them.
That's good to know. I think that may be why my boyfriend likes them. If they get pointy later.
I mean, the Flash and the Arrow are definitely different target audience than Netflix. There's no getting around that. They're on a channel that is targeting a younger demographic. But I definitely thought that Arrow got quite dark. And Flash is heading that way too, at least for a little bit. But I mean, regardless, it's the likelihood of us ever seeing Kate on any kind of screen is slim to none.
Right.
But I think that she is a very interesting character and would merit being expanded further, either in comic books or on TV or on a big screen or something like that.
I'd agree with that.
Cool. So I'm gonna say it's getting kind of close to wrap up time here. Has anybody got any last minute questions or comments to add in?
I have one more. It's a short one. In the Madame Mask story arc, right? At what point did you know that that Hawkeye was basically bait?
Never.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Nope. They got me. I love that. That was really cool.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah,
What about you, Vallen?
I have to say I'm about the same. Yeah, I didn't see it coming really.
Oh, good.
How about you?
I for the first time probably in my entire life, I noticed a little earlier than that. I know.
How?
I don't know. There was something like where his first interaction with Hill, I was like, wait a second. I don't know what it was, but during that first interaction, like, I kind of got this feeling that he was being like set up. Like there was more to the story than just the tape, and I felt like Hill was setting him up. The part that I didn't know was whether he knew about it or not. So
Yeah.
All right, so then I'm
Would
gonna.
you
Go.
continue with it? Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Would you continue with the series? So
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
Adam, you've gotten the first three trade paperbacks. I think I will get the next one at least to see if I continue enjoying it and then move from there, because it really was, I enjoyed it personally.
Helen?
Would you buy the next volumes?
If I was actually
I know that your
purchasing it and we
fiancé
didn't already
has it.
have it,
Yeah, right. But this is why I'm asking.
I would not purchase it.
Ah.
I would be looking for stuff about Kate. I would not be looking for it.
And if the next volume
But
had her on the
since we have
cover?
it at
If the next volume had her on the cover?
Then yeah, I probably would totally buy it. No, I'll probably just glance at it and see if it's got the same kind of vignette short story aspects going on, and if it does, I'll probably give it a miss, to be honest. I like a longer storyline with arcs that could even go through multiple volumes. I'm more of a saga storyline than a Hawkeye short story kind of girl. But that being said, I will glance at it. I just would not seek it out and buy it.
And how about you, Kashka?
oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I would, there's a stack of books, right? There's a stack of books that I want to read, and so even if Vallen picked it up, it would be at the bottom of the stack. I feel like constantly, So, sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
I think there's great characters in there. It's just the story style, the little short stories, and the changing artists drove me a little bit nuts. So, nope, sorry.
Would it change your mind if you knew that Aya was doing part of the second volume?
Aya?
If he was doing the whole second
Oh.
yes, that would help a lot. But if I knew there was going to be artists like swapping around again, that would definitely be like a negative for me. I wouldn't. It would be like a point against buying it, reading it, whatever.
And
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. And I actually will say I'm glad that I got it. I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed it. I don't really think I would continue on with it because it does go at the whole. I don't know. The reason why I actually stopped collecting comics when I was younger was that they kept switching artists and writers on a regular basis. Now, I realize that they don't have as much control over it if they want the series to continue, but it kind of is like that's why you got into it to begin with, was this writer and this artist, or those two working together or something. It really made it for you. And not to knock either one, but it with it switching up to the different stories, the different styles, the different art, it threw me back into that, and that was why I actually kind of got a little disheartened in some of comics. But I really did enjoy it. I was glad that I did. I learned a little bit more about the character, and I was glad to have met the new, and in many people's perspectives, probably myself included, improved Hawkeye as well. I think that it was a really great experience for me, and I really did enjoy it. But I would probably not get another volume of it unless it was actually a more continuous story and a more consistent artist style. So nothing will throw you off going from one art style to a drastically different one. In my mind, that really can mess a person up.
I definitely wouldn't read it like straight through again. Maybe take a break in between stories.
Which actually works really well in this one.
You need like a palate cleanser in between.
That works really well in my mind. I mean, it does read better if you separate out the issues instead of it as a volume. And it was kind of poor when it's done like that. I've read a few volumes that are actually just collections, and it's cool to have them all together. But usually it's best when it's in like a really thick omnibus or something, and then you can just like kind of tear through it and get some history out of a character and stuff. Whereas this, it just I felt a little misled. I thought that it would be a bigger story originally, but when I read about it after the fact, it was like, oh, it's a collection. Whoops. All right, so I think we're probably going to end it here. I hope everybody had a good time here. Let's see. And I guess that's about it. So, next time we're going to be having Bitch Planet Extraordinary Machine. Not for the young at heart. That should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. A lot of people have been talking about it lately. So I guess until next time, folks, we'll all see ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.